Hi, I'm EJ. I love space. I love the planets, I love the stars, and I love everything in between. But what is the in between? What else besides stars and planets are floating around up there? Did you know that there is junk flying around in space? Yeah, you heard that right. Space junk. Another name for it is space debris, or space waste, or space pollution, or space garbage. But space debris, what is that? Debris is scattered pieces of rubble, wreckage, garbage, and remains of something destroyed. So basically, space debris is litter floating around in space. But how did that debris get into space? And what exactly is it? First, let's talk about satellites. A satellite is an object that orbits a planet. An orbit is a regular repeating path that one object in space takes around another one. You can have a natural satellite or an artificial satellite. The moon is a natural satellite. All the planets in the solar system, except Mercury and Venus, have natural satellites. But the artificial satellites are objects that people have made, and most of these get into space through being launched by rockets. Did you know that there are estimated to be 2,666 artificial satellites in space? Over 1,000 of these belong to the United States, the most of any country. China comes second with about 360. These man-made objects circle Earth in orbits that range from as near as 150 miles to 22,500 miles away. These working satellites are super helpful in our everyday lives. They help us with the technology that we use every day, such as GPS, the online map system we use when we're looking for directions, weather forecasting, so we can figure out if we need to get an umbrella ready for the next day, video calls, so we can contact our family members that might live far away, and satellite TV, so we can watch all those awesome cartoon shows, movies, and documentaries that we love. These satellites are super helpful, and they are also helpful for scientists, as they use them to study space, to learn more about Earth and everything around it. They monitor our planet with them, as well as look deep into space to study everything they find. Scientists can collect information from satellites to study the rate of climate change. That's how helpful they are. For over half a century, humans have been putting satellites into orbit around Earth to help with a bunch of different functions. The first artificial satellite was launched into space by the Soviet Union in 1957. It was called Sputnik 1. The first successful United States satellite was Explorer 1. It was launched a year later in 1958. But now, dozens of new satellites are launched into space every year. They orbit around Earth as well as the Moon, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and many other things in space, collecting information from what they can and helping us with technology here on Earth. Artificial satellites have many purposes. One example is the Hubble Space Telescope, which is a scientific satellite that orbits around Earth that was launched in 1990. Hubble takes really sharp pictures of objects in the sky, such as planets, stars, and galaxies, and has made more than 1.3 million space observations. These include detailed pictures of the birth and death of stars, galaxies that are billions of light years away, the discovery of the two moons of Pluto, named Nix and Hydra, and comet pieces crashing into Jupiter's atmosphere. Space stations are a special kind of satellite used by astronauts. Astronauts can live on a space station for months while they gather information and do experiments in space. So basically, there are thousands of artificial satellites in space, allowing us to have a deeper understanding of how the universe works. You have weather satellites, its abbreviation is GOES, communication satellites, ANIC, navigation satellites, GPS, scientific satellites, Terriers, and military satellites, MILSTAR. But with all the working satellites in orbit, there are also bunches that are no longer working. Some of these broken satellites eventually fall back towards Earth, either landing, floating around in Earth's orbit, or burning up in the atmosphere. The heat from the friction of the air burns up the satellites as it falls back towards Earth at thousands of miles per hour. You'd get hot too if you were falling that fast. When this happens, these broken satellites are never to be seen again, but most of them become space debris, cluttering up space and circling Earth for decades. When we say broken satellites, we mean burnt out rocket stages, which are the parts of the rockets that break off as it launches into space. This is because some rockets are multi-stages, meaning some of their parts are boosters, and when they use their fuel up, they detach from the main part of the rocket, falling back down to Earth or burning up in the atmosphere. Broken satellites also consist of dead spacecraft, most of which are space probes sent by scientists that were supposed to land on a planet but missed their landing due to miscalculations by scientists. These probes end up going missing and become space debris. A space probe is a robotic spacecraft that doesn't orbit around Earth, but instead explores further into outer space. Sometimes, astronauts lose tools during spacewalks, and these end up floating around in space too. So much in space can end up as space debris. But usually, space debris isn't as large as the items we described above. It's usually much smaller pieces of broken material from satellites. Space debris also includes fragments of objects, and these tiny fragments can damage working satellites. These occur when satellites collide with things, and can also occur from an object crashing into an old rocket stage that still contains fuel, causing an explosion in space. Litter and pollution aren't just a problem on Earth. When litter ends up in space, it can cause space collisions and damage to satellites, damage the International Space Station, and even harm people on Earth, but that is extremely rare. The chances of any particular individual being struck on Earth by space debris are trillions to 1. How long a piece of space debris takes to fall back to Earth depends on its altitude. Objects below 375 miles stay in orbit for several years before re-entering Earth's atmosphere. Objects above 600 miles stay in orbit for centuries. An average of only one recorded piece of debris has fallen back to Earth each day for the past 50 years, but no debris has yet to cause significant property damage. There have been more than 250 space explosions since the 1960s, and the United States is tracking more than 23,000 pieces of space debris. But it's estimated that there are tens of millions of space debris floating around in space. Scientists are only able to track large objects, which is why there is so much space debris not being tracked. NASA, the space organization for the United States, currently estimates that there are 21,000 pieces of space junk larger than a softball orbiting the Earth that can cause damage to a satellite or a spacecraft. And as of 2020, the United States surveillance network was monitoring more than 14,000 pieces of space debris, larger than 4 inches across. A rocket from China became one of the largest pieces of space debris that fell back down to Earth, and it landed in the Atlantic Ocean. The rocket's empty core stage, which weighed nearly 18 tons, is the largest piece of space debris to fall uncontrolled back to Earth since 1991. Because of all this debris floating around in space, companies all over the world are working on a cosmic cleanup. Astroscale, a company based in Japan, is one of them. They are about to start a mission that will test the concept of using magnets to collect space debris. Astroscale wants to put magnetic plates on satellites before they are launched so their magnetic spacecraft can attach to the space debris and remove non-working satellites from space. It's not easy though. Space debris is moving through the universe at 17,500 miles an hour. Imagine trying to collect trash that's moving that quickly. Another company based in Switzerland, called ClearSpace, also plans to launch a debris removal spacecraft. In this version, the craft will grab a piece of an old rocket, slow it down, eject it back to Earth, and eventually it will burn out. Governments are trying to help too. Some countries are updating their country's space guidelines to limit the amount of debris created because unfortunately, debris floating around Earth puts technology and future space missions at risk. Collisions with large pieces of space debris junk can disable or even destroy spacecrafts. In 1996, the French spacecraft known as Cerise went tumbling when the part that stabilizes it was vaporized in a collision with a part of a rocket that was floating around in space. This space debris was traveling over 30,000 miles per hour, so you can imagine the kind of damage it caused. In 2016, engineers at the European Space Agency noticed a solar panel on their Sentinel-1A satellite used for routine environmental monitoring had been damaged by space debris. The culprit? A millimeter-sized particle. The damage caused about 100 times the diameter. In space, debris travels at high speed. Even dust particles can act like tiny bullets, and something as small as 2 millimeters can rip a hole in an astronaut's spacesuit. But the chance of space debris hitting an astronaut during a spacewalk is 31,000 to 1. So most debris ranges from the size of a tennis ball to a little marble. But most debris, like the one that hit Sentinel-1A, is too small to track, which is why the companies that want to collect space debris are such good news. The issue of space debris is likely to get worse, even if we stop sending more objects in space around the Earth. That's because the objects that are already up there will slowly disintegrate from burning up in the atmosphere and form smaller particles, which may collide with one object and create more particles, and so on. More and more space junk can be created. So now we know that space debris is any human-made object that has stopped working but continues to float around the Earth's atmosphere. But thankfully, companies are working to clean them up. Thanks for joining me today. See you next time!
We are thrilled that you're watching Blues Studios 24/7. We're so excited to bring round-the-clock entertainment and educational content to your home. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to stay up to date with our latest videos. At Blues Studios, we aspire to revolutionize the way families spend time together. We empower families by providing them with tools to work together, earn and learn, and achieve new heights of success. Visit www.bluestudios.io to discover more about our mission and how we empower families to succeed. Thank you so much for being part of our community. Keep watching and learning with us. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button.